and welcome to this week's YouTube video. Today I'm going to show you how I painted this Art Nouveau cat in Procreate and how I worked out the design. As the artwork was done over 3 weeks, I will mainly show the principles of how I did it, so that if you want to have a go at a compositional piece, you'll know how to approach it. The key to any piece like this is not to attempt the whole thing in one go. You will just get overwhelmed by the task. Instead, break it down into manageable principles and deal with each in turn. That is, composition and drawing, value, colour and temperature, and finally edges. Before I show you the time-lapse video, a quick word about the brushes you will need. You will need some kind of drawing tool like a pencil or technical pen, a couple of blocking brushes like the wet acrylic and hard blend, some very wet brushes like the turpentine or oil paint brush, and finally a textured brush like the stucco. The most important thing is that you have a range of brushes that create a variety of different marks. I also wanted to mention that I had an incredibly beautiful reference photo of Teddy to work with, taken by a very skilled photographer. This made my life infinitely easier, as I didn't have to change much about Teddy or his pose. I mainly just needed to work out how I was going to integrate him into some artwork. I love Art Nouveau, and I felt I could work Teddy's pose into something inspired by the Alphonse Mucha paintings. To get a bit of inspiration, I had a look at some of his work online and also some reference books that I purchased a while back when I was creating more artwork inspired by Nouveau and Deco. The first book I used has lots of black and white examples of Art Nouveau drawings and text. It is much more pictorial than the second book I used, which has lots of examples of typography, ornaments and borders. I don't tend to lift exact copies from these 2 books, but you can. It tells you at the front how many illustrations you can work into your own projects. I tend to use them for ideas. For example, this area here and here were inspired from illustrations I saw in the book. Let's now have a look at the time-lapse video and I will talk about how I created this artwork. Number 1, composition and drawing. I had my cat sorted from my reference photo, so I needed ornaments, borders, typography, plus I had to think of some appropriate text. Once I'd figured out what I wanted to say, I broke my canvas down into simple shapes and used the harmonic armature to help me with my placement. If you are not familiar with this tool, have a look at either of these videos on my channel that will show you how to use them. The harmonic armature will always take care of your compositional positioning. The other thing you need to think about is balance and repetition of shapes. So for example, the repetition of this sort of plume shape here, here and here creates a visual triangle for your eyes to move around the picture. The flowers are directly inspired by my Pieris tree in my garden, which I had taken some lovely photos of. Also, I have created 2 rectangular columns here and here, and 2 rectangular shapes here and here, which also create symmetry. Number 2, value study. I've created my line drawing which I'm happy with. I then turn it into black and white value study. I use my red colour picker and I stick to selecting my whites to greys to blacks down the left-hand side. I stay completely within this narrow strip. My aim is to create something that looks harmonious in black and white, because I know if I can get it to work in black and white, it will work in colour. Again, I am principally concerned with balance and contrast. Notice how I have a very limited value range in my fonts and ornaments. It really doesn't stray too far from a mid-grey, apart from in these areas here and here, where I am attempting to create another viewing triangle effect. Also notice that my background value is very narrow too. It falls within this area of my colour picker. I have then created contrast with Teddy where my lightest values are and also my biggest range of values. The effect is a very harmonious picture. Number 3, colour and temperature. I can now work out my colour and temperature from my value study. All value ranges go from 1 to 10, 1 being white and 10 being black. Every colour sits somewhere on this value range. For example, the blue used in this text sits here. So I can begin to replace my greys with colour. And the great thing about my colour picker is that it is separating my cool from my warm temperatures in my reds, oranges, yellows, yellow-greens and violets, and separating my saturated colours from my unsaturated colours. In my artwork, I want to create something quite delicate and harmonious, so I am sticking to more muted, cooler temperatures over this side of my colour picker. If I wanted something more striking, I would choose more saturated colours. How do I choose my palette? Here I have chosen the complementary colours of yellow and purple and blue and orange. When you place complementary colours together, they look amazing. I have also stuck to this side of the colour wheel, creating harmony because all these colours are next to each other. Then it is just about balancing your colours. For example, I am balancing my blues here and here, my purples here and here, my oranges here and here and here, and my pinks here, here and here. Notice how my placement is all largely symmetrical. Number 4, edges. To get that lovely painterly feel in my artwork, it is important to have a range of hard edges, soft edges and lost edges. I could have done my ornaments and fonts in Adobe Illustrator and then dropped them into Procreate or put the whole thing together in Photoshop. However, I wanted a hand-drawn feel to the artwork. After all, the original Art Nouveau posters, which I was inspired by, are all hand-drawn. So it was important to me to keep that element. I have contrasted my harder edges found in my fonts and ornaments with my much softer edges in Teddy. I wanted to create contrast. Had Teddy's edges been hard too, he would have competed with the lettering and decoration. To create a soft edge, choose a really wet brush and turn down your opacity really low, and then paint rigorously over your object, pulling the shape out into its background and then pushing your background into your shape. Finally, I wanted to mention brushwork and layers. For my typography, I have drawn each object on a separate layer and then filled the item in by dragging the colour into my shape. For each element of the shape, I will then start a new layer and then colour fill it just as I have shown you. I will then group that object together by pulling all my layers together, just like this. I have used a hard blend brush for this. I had to think quite hard about keeping my layers organised and making sure that I created the objects in a logical order. For example, background, then ornaments, then Teddy, then typography. Of course, I didn't actually work in that order, but I knew my layers had to be organised in that order. For the background, I have mainly used the airbrushes to create a soft feel. For Teddy, I have used blocking brushes, wet brushes and textured brushes. I have laid paint in various transparencies over the top of each other to give me that painterly effect. There isn't one brush that I know of that will give me that painterly effect. It is a combination of multiple brushes all used together. If you would like to see more about how to use brushes in a painterly way, have a look at these videos on my channel. And here is the final artwork. I hope you can see that by separating your process up into manageable chunks, it can make it easier to do more complex pieces of narrative artwork. If I am doing anything that is compositional based and requires a certain amount of imagination, this is the process I will use. I hope you have enjoyed today's video and found it useful. Please like and subscribe if you can, and check out my website sarahhallidayart.com, where you will find examples of my work and also details of online classes that I run. Thank you for watching, and see you for the next one.